First Contact Protocols. High Monitor Selaxin watched the holographic display with growing concern as the strange signals continued to pulse across the detection grid. In her centuries of service to the collective mind, she had never encountered anything quite like this. The emanations came from a system that, according to all previous surveys, should have contained nothing more advanced than primitive chemical rockets. Analysis complete, High Monitor, announced third observer Crixel, his crystalline form shifting colors in agitation. The signal patterns indicate artificial quantum entanglement. But that's impossible. The species in that system only achieved atomic fission 80 cycles ago. Selaxin's neural tendrils coiled tightly against her cranial shell, a sign of deep thought among her kind. The collective mind had carefully monitored this species, humans, they called themselves, since their first radio broadcasts were detected. Their development had been remarkably fast, but followed predictable patterns. Until now. "Show me the vessel," she commanded. The hologram shifted, revealing a ship unlike anything in the collective's vast database. Where collective vessels were elegant crystalline structures grown through centuries of careful cultivation, this human ship was all harsh angles and exposed metal. Massive cylindrical structures extended from its central hull, rotating slowly to generate artificial gravity, a crude but effective solution the collective had abandoned millennia ago in favor of gravity manipulation fields. "Fascinating," Selaxin murmured. "They bypassed entire technological stages we considered essential." Third observer, what do our protocols dictate for this situation? Crixel's crystalline form flickered through several shades of uncertainty. The protocols don't address this scenario, High Monitor. All our first contact procedures assume technological progression along established paths. These humans, they are developing in ways we never predicted. The human vessel continued its steady progress through space, its rotating sections maintaining a rhythm that seemed almost defiant of conventional spacefaring wisdom. More data flowed across the holographic displays, energy readings that made no sense, radiation patterns that shouldn't exist, and most disturbing of all, clear signs of quantum manipulation that the humans should have been centuries away from achieving. "They're heading toward the Proxima colony," Second Navigator Yexel reported, her voice carrying harmonics of worry. "At current velocity, they'll reach the colony in less than 20 rotations." Selaxin felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her neural network. The Proxima colony was one of the collective's most ambitious projects, a carefully engineered ecosystem being gradually adapted for carbon-based life. If these humans, with their unpredictable technology and dangerous tendency to defy conventional development, discovered it, we have no choice, she decided. Initiate first contact protocols, but modify them for, she paused, searching for the right words, unprecedented circumstances. The bridge crew of the observation vessel shifted uncomfortably. First contact protocols were clear, precise, and above all, designed for civilizations that developed along known technological paths. These humans, with their bizarre hybrid of primitive and advanced technology, their quantum signatures that shouldn't exist, and their rotating habitat sections, defied every assumption those protocols were built upon. High Monitor, Crixel ventured, perhaps we should consult the collective mind directly. This situation. There's no time, Selaxin interrupted. Signal propagation to the nearest collective node would take days. We must act now. She straightened her neural tendrils, a gesture of authority. Prepare the greeting sequence, but keep our defense screens at maximum capacity. These humans, we must be prepared for anything. As her crew rushed to comply, Selaxin studied the human vessel again. Its design spoke of a species that solved problems differently, thought differently, and perhaps most concerning of all, didn't seem to care about the established rules of technological progression. The massive rotating sections alone violated dozens of collective engineering principles, yet they worked, and worked well. Message configured, High Monitor, announced 4th Communications Officer Zixel. Shall I transmit? Selaxin took one final look at the human ship. In all her centuries of service, she had never felt so uncertain about a first contact situation. These humans, with their impossible quantum signatures and their defiance of established technological progression, represented something the collective had never faced before, a truly unpredictable species. "Transmit," she ordered, her neural tendrils rippling with anticipation. "And may the collective mind guide us through whatever comes next." The message lanced out through space, a carefully crafted sequence of mathematical proofs and universal constants designed to demonstrate intelligence and peaceful intent. As it traveled toward the human vessel, Selaxin couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover just how inadequate their carefully constructed first contact protocols really were. For the first time in her long career, she found herself facing a species that didn't just think outside the box. They seemed unaware the box had ever existed in the first place. The battle that never was. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the massive holographic display aboard the ESS Pioneer, her dark eyes reflecting the complex mathematical patterns that danced across the screen. As the ship's chief xenolinguist, she'd spent years preparing for first contact, but nothing in her training had prepared her for this. "They're definitely trying to communicate," she announced to the bridge crew. "But their mathematical syntax is strange. It's like they're trying to prove they're intelligent by showing increasingly complex proofs, but they're skipping steps we consider fundamental." Captain Miguel Rodriguez leaned forward in his command chair, the gentle humming of the Pioneer's rotation motors providing a steady backdrop to their discussion. "Are they threatening us?" "No," Sarah replied, her fingers moving through the holographic symbols. "If anything, they seem cautious, almost afraid." She paused, studying a new sequence. "And they keep repeating patterns associated with what we think are their navigation protocols. I believe they're trying to warn us away from something." The captain nodded slowly. The Pioneer wasn't technically a military vessel. It was humanity's first interstellar colony ship, carrying 10,000 sleeping colonists in its massive rotating habitats. But like everything humans built for space, it was designed with survival in mind. "Dr. Patel," Rodriguez called to his chief physicist, "what do you make of their ship?" Dr. Rajesh Patel looked up from his own displays, his expression thoughtful. "It's fascinating, Captain. Their hull appears to be some kind of grown crystal matrix, incredibly sophisticated, but also incredibly rigid in its design. They're using quantum field manipulation for propulsion, but in a way that's almost primitive compared to our hybrid systems." "Primitive?" Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "They're clearly an advanced species." "Advanced, yes, but in a very linear way," Patel explained. "It's like they discovered one path of technological development and followed it to its logical extreme. They've perfected quantum field manipulation, but they seem to have completely ignored other possibilities. Their sensors keep probing our rotation habitats as if they can't understand why we'd use such a primitive solution for artificial gravity." Lieutenant Commander Jessica Wong spoke up from the tactical station. "Sir, they're moving to surround us. Formation suggests they're following standard containment protocols, at least standard for them." Rodriguez considered their options. The Pioneer carried humanity's hopes for its first extrasolar colony, but it also carried something else: humanity's knack for unconventional solutions to complex problems. "Dr. Chen, can you send them a message back? Something to show we understand their mathematical language, but also demonstrate how we think differently." Sarah's eyes lit up. "Actually, yes. We could send them a demonstration of our hybrid computing approach. Show them how we combine quantum and classical computing in ways they might not have considered." "Do it," Rodriguez ordered. "And Jessica, power up our defensive systems, but keep them in passive mode. Let's show them we can protect ourselves without being threatening." As Sarah worked on the message, the alien vessels continued their careful maneuvering. Their crystalline hulls caught the light of distant stars, creating rainbow refractions that would have been beautiful if they weren't so clearly positioning for potential conflict. "Message ready," Sarah announced. I've included a primer on how we approach problem solving, using our hybrid computing architecture as an example. I've also added some basic information about our mission, that we're colonists, not warriors. Send it, Rodriguez commanded. The message streamed out from the Pioneer's communication array. Almost immediately, the alien vessel's movements changed. They seemed to hesitate, their perfect formation showing signs of confusion. They're responding, Sarah reported, her hands dancing through the holographic symbols. Their message patterns are completely different now. More chaotic. I think we surprised them. Dr. Patel laughed suddenly. Captain, you need to see this. Their power signatures just went haywire. I think our hybrid computing demonstration literally crashed their systems. They're having to reboot their quantum processors to handle our data format. Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. Well, that's one way to make an impression. Dr. Chen, once they're back online, let's send them something really interesting. Show them how we use rotational gravity in conjunction with quantum field manipulation. Let's see how they handle that paradox. The next few hours became a fascinating exchange of technological concepts. The aliens, recovering from their initial shock, began sending increasingly detailed questions about human technology. Their original containment formation gradually shifted into what appeared to be a more observational pattern. They're scanning everything, Paddle reported with excitement. Our hybrid drives, our rotating habitats, our computing systems. It's like they've discovered a whole new way of thinking about technology. And their responses are becoming more flexible, Sarah added. They're starting to experiment with different mathematical syntaxes, trying to match our communication style. It's like they're learning to think outside their usual patterns. Rodriguez watched the alien ships with growing optimism. What had started as a potential confrontation was transforming into something far more interesting. A meeting of minds that approached the universe in fundamentally different ways. Sir, Jessica reported, they're requesting permission to send a representative aboard. Their message includes what appears to be their own first contact protocols. But, she paused, checking her readings. They've modified them extensively. I think they're trying to adapt their procedures to match our unconventional approach. The captain stood, straightening his uniform. Well, crew, it seems we've managed to avoid a battle by winning something far more important, their curiosity. Dr. Chen, please inform our guests that we would be honored to receive them. And let's show them how humans handle first contact protocols, by being ready to throw out the rulebook entirely if that's what it takes to make a real connection. Understanding the impossible. High Monitor Selaxin had never felt more uncertain as she materialized in the human ship's receiving chamber. Her crystalline form cast prismatic patterns across the metal walls, a stark reminder of how different their species were. The room itself defied her expectations. Instead of the sterile, controlled environment mandated by collective protocols, the humans had created a space that somehow combined functionality with what she could only interpret as aesthetic consideration. The human delegation waited at a respectful distance. Their soft, organic forms seemed impossibly fragile to Selaxin's eyes. Yet these were the beings who had appended centuries of collective technological doctrine in a matter of hours. Welcome aboard the Pioneer, said the human leader, Captain Rodriguez. They had learned. His vocal patterns were accompanied by subtle body movements that their xenologists were still struggling to interpret. We've adjusted atmospheric conditions to match your requirements. Selaxin's neural tendrils rippled in acknowledgement. Your consideration honors us, she responded through the translation field. Though I must admit, your methods of environmental control are unexpected. Dr. Sarah Chen stepped forward, her eyes bright with curiosity. You're referring to our use of mechanical systems alongside quantum environmental fields. We find the redundancy useful. If one system fails, the other serves as backup. The concept sent harmonic disturbances through Selaxin's crystalline matrix. Redundancy was inefficient, imperfect. Yet, your ship survived 3 system failures during our initial contact period, she observed. Our sensors detected no interruption in functionality. Exactly. Dr. Patel joined in. We call it hybrid resilience. Different systems, different principles, all working together. It's not the most elegant solution, but it works. Selection finished, her neural patterns shifting with new understanding. Like your computing systems, you deliberately maintain primitive binary processors alongside quantum matrices. Rodriguez smiled, a gesture their briefings had identified as positive. We've learned that sometimes the old ways work best, sometimes the new ways work best, and sometimes the best solution is to use both together. The conversation moved to the ship's observation deck, where the massive rotating habitat sections were visible through reinforced windows. Selection found herself drawn to the view, her crystalline form resonating with unfamiliar frequencies. Your species continued developing mechanical artificial gravity even after achieving quantum field manipulation, she stated. Our analyses suggested this was inefficient, even primitive. Yet it allows us to maintain gravity even if we lose power, Rodriguez explained. And the rotation itself helps generate energy for our backup systems. Everything serves multiple purposes. Third observer Crixel, who had accompanied Selection, shifted colors in agitation. But this defies optimization protocols. Each system should be perfected individually, not entangled with. He paused, his crystalline form flickering as he processed a new thought. Although entanglement itself is a fundamental principle of quantum mechanics, perhaps there is a deeper pattern here we have failed to recognize. Dr. Chen's expression brightened. Exactly. We found that technologies often work better when they're allowed to influence and support each other, even if they seem incompatible at first. It's like, she searched for an analogy, like your crystalline biology. Each facet serves its purpose, but together they create something greater than the sum of their parts. Selection felt her neural patterns reorganizing, accommodating these new concepts. The humans hadn't just developed technology differently. They approached the very idea of progress from a fundamentally different perspective. Your colony ship, she said suddenly. The one you're establishing in the Proxima system. Our analysis suggested your methods were dangerously unstable, requiring constant adjustment rather than achieving perfect equilibrium. That's right, Rodriguez confirmed. We call it dynamic stability. Instead of trying to create a perfect, unchanging system, we build ones that can adapt and evolve. The implications sent cascading resonances through Selection's entire being. The collective had spent centuries trying to perfect their colony ecosystems, seeking an impossible stasis. These humans, with their hybrid systems and redundant solutions, might have found a better way. Captain Rodriguez, she announced, her neural tendrils aligning in formal configuration. I believe the collective mind would benefit greatly from studying your approaches. Would your people consider sharing your colony development data with us? Better yet, Rodriguez replied, why don't we collaborate? Our colony could serve as a test bed for combining our different approaches. After all, if we've learned anything today, it's that the best solutions often come from bringing different perspectives together. As discussions continued, Selection found herself experiencing an emotion that centuries of service hadn't prepared her for, excitement about an uncertain future. These humans, with their imperfect solutions and hybrid systems, had shown her that there was more than one path to the stars. And perhaps she realized, watching the massive habitat rings continue their endless rotation, that was the most important lesson of all. Bridge between stars. 3 months into the joint Proxima Colony project, Dr. Sarah Chen found herself facing a challenge no linguistic algorithm could solve. Before her, a holographic display showed the colony's environmental systems rapidly approaching critical failure. Beside her, her crystalline colleague third observer Crixel flickered through shades of distress as their perfectly engineered solutions collapsed one by one. The atmospheric processors are rejecting the quantum harmonization fields, Crixel reported, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. The system is supposed to be perfect. We've used these exact specifications on 12 different colonies. Sarah watched the numbers spiral downward, but instead of panic, she felt a familiar spark of inspiration. Maybe that's the problem, she said. We're trying to force two different approaches to work perfectly together, instead of letting them find their own balance. The Colonial Control Center hummed with activity as human and collective engineers worked side by side. The massive dome above them showed the rust-red landscape of Proxima. Their attempt to merge human and alien terraforming technologies, creating unexpected challenges with each passing day. Captain Rodriguez entered the control center, accompanied by High Monitor Selaxon. The alien leader's crystalline form had adapted over the past months, developing new facets that her kind said reflected new ways of thinking. Status report, Rodriguez requested, his calm voice belying the seriousness of the situation. The quantum harmonization fields are failing to stabilize the atmospheric processors, Crixel reported. The hybrid system is becoming increasingly chaotic. We must shut it down and revert to proven collective methods before. Wait, Sarah interrupted, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. Look at this pattern in the chaos. The systems aren't fighting each other. They're trying to synchronize, but in a way we didn't expect. Dr. Paddle rushed over, his eyes widening as he studied the data. She's right. The quantum fields aren't rejecting our mechanical systems. They're attempting to match their frequency. It's like they're learning to dance together. Selaxon moved closer, her neural tendrils extending to interface directly with the monitoring systems. Impossible, she whispered, but her tone carried harmonics of wonder rather than dismissal. The quantum fields are adapting their fundamental frequencies to match your mechanical oscillations. This defies all established principles of quantum harmonization. But it's working, Sarah pointed out. The environmental readings, while still fluctuating wildly, were beginning to show a pattern. Instead of trying to force stability, what if we help them find their own rhythm? Rodriguez smiled. Like teaching partners to dance, he said, each one has to learn the other's steps. Over the next several hours, the combined human collective team worked to adjust their systems, not to enforce perfect harmony, but to create space for natural synchronization. They discovered that the quantum fields, when given the freedom to adapt, could actually enhance the efficiency of the mechanical systems in ways neither species had predicted. Remarkable, Crixel observed, his color shifting to deep blue tones of revelation. By allowing for imperfection, we've achieved something beyond our definition of perfect. The success with the environmental systems proved to be just the beginning. As humans and the collective learned to truly work together, they began to discover more instances where their different approaches could complement rather than conflict with each other. High Monitor Selaxon found herself spending more time in the human sections of the colony, fascinated by their approach to problem-solving. Your species, she observed to Rodriguez one day, treats each challenge as an opportunity to learn something new. Even failure becomes a tool for progress. That's because we've learned that progress isn't always about finding the perfect solution, Rodriguez replied. Sometimes it's about finding new questions to ask. As the colony grew, it became something neither species had initially envisioned. The rigid crystal structures of collective architecture began to incorporate human-inspired adaptive elements. Human technology gained new efficiency from quantum harmonization principles. But perhaps most importantly, both species began to see the value in approaching problems from multiple perspectives. You know what's really interesting? Sarah said to Crixel as they watched a sunset paint the dome in crystalline refractions. We started this project thinking we needed to overcome our differences. Instead, we've learned that our differences are our greatest strength. Crixel's form sparkled with agreement. The collective has always sought perfection through unity. But you humans have shown us that true unity doesn't mean everyone must be the same. News of the colony's success began to spread, both through human space and the vast network of the collective mind. Other species, hearing of this unprecedented collaboration, began to take notice. The rigid hierarchies and technological orthodoxies that had dominated galactic civilization for millennia were being challenged by the simple idea that different paths could lead to the same stars. As the first year of the colony drew to a close, Captain Rodriguez stood with High Monitor Selection in the observation dome, watching their combined creation thrive against all predictions. "We've done more than build a colony," Selection said, her neural patterns radiating contentment. "We've built a bridge between different ways of thinking." Rodriguez nodded, watching as human children played near a group of young crystalline beings, neither group seemingly aware that their interaction should have been impossible. "And that," he said, "might be the most important thing we could have built." New Horizons. 5 years after the first contact between humans and the collective, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Proxima colony had become more than just a successful experiment. It was a symbol of what was possible when different species chose to learn from each other rather than fear their differences. In the colony's central plaza, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a gathering of representatives from 12 different spacefaring civilizations. Above them, the dome now incorporated both crystalline and traditional materials, creating an ever-shifting pattern of light that represented the merging of technologies and ideas. "The key to our success wasn't finding perfect solutions," she explained to the assembled delegates. "It was learning to embrace the dynamic nature of collaboration. When we stopped trying to force compatibility and started allowing natural synchronization, we discovered possibilities neither humans nor the collective had imagined alone." High Monitor Selection, her crystalline form now bearing complex new patterns that the collective had never seen before, moved to join her. "Our species had spent millennia pursuing technological perfection along rigid, predetermined paths. The humans showed us that true advancement often requires stepping away from the familiar and embracing new perspectives." The evidence of their success surrounded them. The colony had grown far beyond its original scope, becoming a testing ground for revolutionary hybrid technologies. Quantum-enhanced mechanical systems, adaptive crystalline structures, and entirely new forms of computing that combined organic, digital, and quantum processes in ways that defied traditional classification. Captain Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez of the newly formed Interstellar Cooperation Fleet, addressed the gathering next. "5 years ago, we nearly started a conflict because we couldn't understand each other's approaches to technology. Today, we're showing the galaxy that our differences aren't obstacles to overcome, they're opportunities to explore." The impact of human collective cooperation had rippled across known space. Other species, long stuck in their own technological ruts, began experimenting with hybrid approaches. The rigid hierarchies that had dominated galactic civilization for millennia were giving way to more flexible, adaptive systems inspired by the human model. Dr. Patel, leading a team of multi-species researchers, had recently made a breakthrough in faster-than-light travel by combining human intuitive engineering with collective quantum manipulation and technologies from 3 other species. "We've learned that the path forward isn't about choosing between different approaches," he told the delegates. "It's about finding ways to make them work together." Third Observer Crixel, now First Innovator Crixel after the collective reorganized its scientific hierarchy, demonstrated their latest achievement: a new form of artificial intelligence that merged human neural network designs with crystalline quantum processing and biological components from other species. "This is what becomes possible," he said, his form shimmering with pride, "when we stop asking which way is right and start asking what can we learn from each other." The gathering marked more than just a celebration of technological achievements. It represented a fundamental shift in how spacefaring civilizations viewed progress itself. The human concept of hybrid resilience had sparked a revolution in thinking that extended far beyond engineering. 10 years ago, Selection addressed the assembly. "The collective would have dismissed many of you as primitive because your development didn't follow our expected patterns. The humans taught us that there are as many paths to the stars as there are species who wish to reach them." As the delegates moved through the colony, they saw the future taking shape around them. Young members of various species trained together, each bringing their unique perspectives to shared challenges. Research teams comprised of humans, crystalline beings, and representatives from a dozen other civilizations worked side by side, their different approaches creating solutions that would have been impossible in isolation. Sarah found herself in the colony's quantum garden, a space where crystalline growths merged with traditional earth plants in seemingly impossible ways. A group of children, human, crystalline, and others, played nearby, their laughter and harmonic resonances mixing in the air. When we first started this colony, she said to Rodriguez and Salaxin as they joined her, we thought we were just trying to survive on an alien world. Instead, we ended up helping to reshape the galaxy. Rodriguez watched the children play, remembering the tension of that first contact. We showed them that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our resilience, he said. It's our ability to adapt, to learn, and to find common ground with those who seem different from us. Selexin's neural tendrils rippled in agreement, and in doing so, you helped us all remember something we had forgotten in our pursuit of perfection, that the universe is too vast and wonderful for any one species to have all the answers.